Now we are live. Welcome everyone to the weekly crypto recap show. It's been a pretty intense week, lots of hacks to talk about, lots of new exciting projects as well. And I'm really delighted to have these two wonderful gentlemen joining me today on the show. We have Joel Valenzuela from Dash Force News, and we have the Crypto Lark, who has an awesome YouTube channel. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you for being here. There are lots of things to be covering, so let's jump straight into this. And also, just before we do, so we've got some crazy time zones happening across this stream. I'm currently in Perth. Lark, you are in Wellington.
That's right, Wellington, New Zealand.
Yeah, I feel like we're on the same page here. You know, I'm like someone in my time zone, but it's not even close. It's like 6-hour difference or something.
Same day. We'll got Alex from Nuggets News is in the chat. He's in Tasmania. So,
awesome. You know. Welcome. That's cool. I actually did I know he was from Tasmania? I don't know if I knew that. That's cool. And Joel, you're calling in from New Hampshire, I presume.
Yes, absolutely. That's where I'm at. You know the time zone.
So you're in the past. That's, I mean, we're in the future here. It's already Friday.
Nostalgia hit me too hard. I'm living in the past. Sorry.
Yeah, nostalgia hit you too hard. Absolutely. But anyone who wants to watch this through bitbacker.io, I have put the link in the chat there. A wonderful platform where if you want to send a super chat, YouTube won't take 30% of it. So that's a great alternative, isn't it? So if anyone wanted to chat through there, then you're more than welcome to. And you're more than welcome to just watch through there. So the video is embedded and you can just hop on over there. Oh, we have Ricardo from Sydney. Wonderful. Great to have you all. So let's start straight off. Obviously, huge news this week was that Grin launched, and there's heaps of hype around that. It's funny because I didn't see the same amount of hype around Beam, but that's another project that I'm really excited about, both implementations of the Mimblewimble protocol. So Grin did launch. The price really spiked. It's since crashed. In the last 24 hours, the price has gone down 71.5%, which is pretty dramatic and to be expected because it really was just like this big spike. But are you guys looking into either of the Mimblewimble coins? Because this is something that I've been following for a long time and been pretty excited to watch the launch of. It just seems, I don't know, seems pretty cool. But I'm just wondering, did you guys get into it? Are you mining it? Are you like completely not caring at all?
Yeah, so I'm kind of on the periphery of this whole thing. It caught my attention from the hype, and I always kind of keep a side eye out on what's going on with there. Reminds me very much of Zcash in its launch, of how some people were buying a single unit of Zcash for like 7 Bitcoin or something like that, and then promptly got wrecked. And it's been pretty crazy. And then this is a very similar situation where you have a much anticipated privacy coin, and then all of a sudden you get, I really pity the person who bought, a moment of silence for whoever bought at the top right there, because it's not like the whole market up and down. It's like it may never be that high again.
Ever. Holding that bag for years. Well, it's really brutal when it comes down to it. You see these kind of launches happen. You get very, almost no volume at all. It was somebody bought it for $250, but you have to keep in mind there was only about $7,000 or $8,000 in volume happening at that time. So yeah, in terms of actually getting into them, I haven't got into either of them. I mean, right now I'm kind of just hanging back and just dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin and Cardano and a couple other coins, not looking to take any new positions. But I am excited about the technology. Privacy technology is this constant moving field in terms of new developments and new things happening. So to see Mimblewimble coming out, it's a funny name. I just can't get over the name. It's hilarious.
I love it so much. I did a live stream with Kieran Mosquito the other day, just talking about the difference between Grin and Beam and the history of the name. So if you want to know all about Harry Potter, then go check that out. I just adore it. And it's funny because my sister, who always makes fun of me because I visit her like once a year, stay with her, and I'm always out here doing these live streams. So she catches these like glimpses of the crypto world, and then she comes downstairs after I'd finished that live stream and was like, "It's a Harry Potter coin? I'm in." she was
exactly.
At that point.
Well, hey, you might be able to get her on Bitbacker if you rename the platform to Patronus.
Okay, done. Fantastic.
Someone's going to sue you, though. It's too close to Patreon.
Yeah, they probably are. Unlike Patreon, which was completely different. So lots of VC money going into Grin. There was so Eric Meltzer wrote about the Grin launch in his proof of work newsletter. He says there is, by our conservative estimates, $100 million of mostly VC money invested into special purpose investment vehicles to mine Grin. This does a lot of weird things. It turns a bunch of people who would have been buyers of Grin into sellers of it, and it changes the composition of the early holder roster. And it means that the chain will launch with an extremely high degree of security via high proof of work hash rate. That's really interesting. So, I mean, as we saw, the price was just through the roof when that launched, and so much hype all over the internet. Everyone was kind of tweeting about it. Jamison Lott was tweeting about it. So, I mean, are you guys excited about it? Like, what do we think we're going to see here?
Yeah, so I am always into the concept of privacy, and that was one of the first reasons I got into Bitcoin way back in the old days, is because of its pseudonymous nature, to where people just did not know who was using it, and you could do different wallets, different addresses. Now, of course, it's a little easier to trace, but was always into that. But one thing I noticed about the market is the market has slots for different things. And it used to be Bitcoin at 90% market dominance was everything pretty much. And then the payment coin kind of thing jettisoned off into, like, say, Litecoin, Dash, Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Cash, whatever. And then the privacy coin thing was, Darkcoin and Monero for a while, and then Dash turned into a different direction. And I like having, now there's like 3 big hyped competitors for the privacy slot. And rather than the market just choosing like the win by default, I kind of like that there's 3 now, that only the best one can win out now. Now we have a better, more competitive field for that one slot, that one demand of the market.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the competition going on between these different. Oh my goodness. Cuteness
like
attack.
A puppy.
So we've got a new addition to the stream. He's like whimpering because he wants to get in. You can't whimper, buddy.
I like Wimble.
I want to participate too. I want to talk to you about crypto. All right, off you go. Yeah, no, it's super interesting. I think we're all going to be keeping an eye on it. I was interested in the price differential between Beam and Grin. So if we look at the markets right now, pull that up. So Grin is going at the moment, like according to CoinGecko, $8.49, and then Beam is going for 69 cents. So I mean that's pretty huge for coins that do have a lot of similarities there. So I'm interested in that disparity. I'm wondering, like, do you guys have any thoughts about that? I mean,
no, there might be something in terms of, relative scarcity of Grin right now, considering mining. Right. I mean, I'm not sure when Beam started, or
Beam started
what the supply
at
of Beam
the start
is.
of this year, so only a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just got that. There's more of it in the market. Maybe, I don't know if there's any pre-mine behind that, and if there's any investors kind of flooding the market with cheap coins, what the total supply is, et cetera, et cetera. But the overall idea, I think, is very interesting. Get more competition into the privacy coin space is great. Yeah, the more implementations, the more people trying out new ideas is nothing but a positive overall. And the one thing I think it reminds me of a little bit, just in the terms of how it's being done, is actually Ravencoin, because you saw what happened with Ravencoin. It had Overstock put a bunch of money into Ravencoin mining in the very, very early days of Ravencoin, just in the same way that now we see a lot of big money going behind Grin mining. And so it's, there's no pre-mine, there's no BS like that. It's just a very coordinated mining effort at the start. And some people will criticize that and go, oh, there are too many miners at the start. But then, when there's not too many miners, oh, there weren't enough miners and somebody mined all the coins, so it's a scam. So you can't win when it comes down to these things, but the tech will speak for itself in the long run.
Well, you sort of can. If you look, you can see the emission rates of various coins. And if some of them are really skewed for very fast mining at the very beginning, and then it's just only the original folks who could really get a large position. But then you have other ones, like, say, Bitcoin based ones that are take a long time to go mine out. So I mean, remember the hysteria around Zcash when it first came out, yet it still only has barely over a quarter of its eventual supply mined. And then if you compare, for example, Dash and Monero, who came out right around the same time, although Dash was a little bit earlier. Dash only has 45% of its total supply mined, whereas Monero is already up to 74. So there's a little bit of a disparity with that whole thing. And I'm not too familiar with Beam or Grin's emission rate, I mean, or that of most coins. I mean, that's kind of a little bit more in the weeds than most people get. But if you look at that, that's how you can kind of tell, you know, what the relative fairness type thing. And coordinating mining to some crypto outsiders might seem like insider trading. It's like, oh, you know, this is going to be big. You're all going to be mining on it at the beginning. And then you get that sort of unfair advantage, but you get to not pre-mine technically. So then it seems a little bit nicer, but it isn't. So there's a few things that could be going on here. So I would look into it a little bit more to see where I kind of find out where I kind of fall on that.
Right. I just got a couple of power chats through. So Lamasby, who said it would be cool if we could tip the host and the guests as well. Excited for the show. You actually can. So Joel and Lark, you guys both have Bitbacker pages. So if you wanted to put
I have one?
You should do. Do you not?
If not, I don't know.
If you do not, I will
might have been
very
I
surprised.
might have been maybe being a conscientious objector until Dash gets integrated, but
you know what? That's the opposite way of how you should be doing it. They're probably incentivized to only add coins where there's a good community there. So if there's no Dash community on there, you know, well, CryptoLark at least has an account. So if you go to his page, yeah, you can actually. Anyone who posts the link in there can receive donations there. So I've got mine posted there. If you go to CryptoLark's page, you can also send him tips as well. So highly encourage you to do that because he's awesome. Joelle, you missed out here. All right.
Yeah.
You got to get on
confirming the account. Don't worry.
Yay.
I'll be there very
shortly. You
actually
have CryptoLark. There's another question directed at you. So Anonymous sent through a chat. They said, "What is your bias towards BCH? I often see you get excited about less value coins, but you disrespect BCH. May I ask why?"
This is gonna be interesting.
Oh, yeah, good question. Good question. I think that's a very loaded question. We'll put it off there. But,
why you disrespected?
Why you disrespecting my coin, boy? No, seriously. But look, the reality is Bitcoin Cash, I was very open to Bitcoin Cash when it first came out. But when I saw them normalizing Craig Wright, that's when they really lost me.
Oh, yeah.
That was the moment where I was like, guys, I'm done. I'm done. How can you?
So what
you got
about
fake
now?
Toshi
Now that there's a split, I mean, I'm not a big fan of SV. Everyone knows that. How do you feel about ABC? How do you feel about BCH now?
You know, honestly, I look at both those coins right now, and I'm just, I don't feel like they've got a very exciting future. And look, I'm not so stuck in my ways that I can't be open to new ideas and that I can't let things play out and see where they go. But I'm not putting my money into either of those coins. But definitely, I don't think I would ever invest in Bitcoin Satoshi Vision for any reason, even if that becomes, I don't know, the big coin. There's going to be plenty of other things.
It feels like it's antithetical to the ethos that Bitcoin stands for. It's this very centralized, government-friendly, patent trolling thing. I mean, that's Craig Wright, and I'm sort of joining the two there. But unless they disassociate themselves, Bitcoin SV kind of is Craig Wright.
It's the Craig coin. You can't really call it anything else right now. And look, Bitcoin Cash has basically ended up being the Bitmain coin for large intents and purposes. They control.
You could say that BTC is the Blockstream coin. You could say
that's
that.
True,
I
know you can easily go that way, but you look at who's mining, Bitcoin SV, and it's mostly CoinGeek. You look at who's mining Bitcoin Cash, and a lot of it's coming from Antpool right now. So, I haven't checked the numbers recently. Last time I did, that was where it was at. So, like I said, I'm more open to Bitcoin Cash, I think, moving forward. But right now, considering how divisive they've been with everything, they're just not for me. They're not my coins, and I'm I don't try to needlessly bash those projects, but honestly, they're just not for me.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, we will keep you updated if his opinion changes now that the different teams have gone their separate ways. Let's move on because we've got a lot of stuff to get
through. By the way, I do have a Bitbacker now. It's /the Desert Links.
Yay!
And I do just for CryptoLark, my only crypto address is a Bitcoin Cash address.
Nice.
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
All right, so regarding Beam, there were critical vulnerabilities found in the Beam wallet that may have also led to price changes there. The devs said like there's been a fix. There's dealt with pretty swiftly, but does say that the funds were vulnerable for a time there. So obviously, I mean, it's so hard to get code that is bulletproof and get it out. So it's not surprising that they had issues at the start. A lot of coins have. Did you guys follow that vulnerability at all?
Nah, didn't keep an eye on it, but I'm not surprised either. These things, especially just after coins get launched, you see these kind of things come out. And look, it didn't end up being an issue. They found it, they fixed it. Yeah. This happens in tech. If you're not ready for these kind of road bumps, then you should, I don't know, definitely keep your crypto investments to the point of things that are very, very well established in the market. But even then, things happen. Look at the Ethereum Classic, look at the Ethereum upgrade, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, it all depends on your risk tolerance. And in crypto, I think all of us are on a far end of the spectrum there. So when you're talking about, well, only stick to well-established crypto coins where the volatility is still like,
yeah, of course. It's interesting. I mean, it also is a philosophical thing where a lot of times people will launch kind of shoddy projects with just trying to get in on the hype and trying to get on the money that comes with that. Or sometimes one thing that just it's kind of bonkers to me is when people launch something that's trading high on coin market cap it's not even on mainnet. It's like people are valuing a non-existent thing. I mean, I remember EOS was it a Ethereum token for a while before they migrated their own blockchain. I think didn't Cardano have something similar like that? And that kind of practice can kind of lead to these sorts of things. We have launches of something that just no one knows if it actually works or not.
Right. Let's keep going. I want to talk about the Cryptopia hack that happened earlier this week.
New Zealand!
This is your land. This is your land. So New Zealand-based cryptocurrency exchange Cryptopia, they went offline. They said that they were hacked. It was announced on Twitter. And apparently it was $2.4 million worth of Ethereum was taken from there, which is huge, especially because this is not a large exchange either. So the website, it went offline. There was a notice that said Cryptopia is currently in unscheduled maintenance mode. That's always like a loaded sentence there. Unscheduled maintenance mode. It's quite diplomatic of them to phrase it that way. We will be back soon. So since then, the New Zealand police have gotten involved. They're investigating all of this. They've been working closely with Cryptopia, and apparently it's been ruled out that it was like a exit scam or anything like that, that they've been very cooperative. But what have you guys noticed? That you guys have both looked into this. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thought is a little bit of a broader thought in general, that we see these sorts of things happen all the time. Remember the Proof of Keys event, which, I mean, I'm not sure if it's great for everyone to do a run on the exchanges at the same time, but a friend of mine who runs a exchange, peer-to-peer exchange called Wall of Coins, he was always, I remember quoting him in an article saying that centralized exchanges are essentially giant honeypots. It's like that's where everyone's money is. It's easy, and there's always like hot wallets going on all the time. There's not very much in cold storage. And from personal knowledge and knowledge of industry, he said that they had some very lax security practices. And so basically it's like one spot with all the money where people are going to try to steal it. Like how likely is it that your mobile wallet or your Trezor or whatever you have is going to be a target at all? Is it even on anyone's radar? Or are people just going to be going after the big exchanges where they can just take a whole bunch and then there you go? So definitely would not keep a lot of money on exchanges.
Well, that's interesting because you had Binance guy who tweeted about this and who actually said that that he would advise people to be careful of storing their funds themselves. USBs can break, they can get stolen, all of this, and trusted exchanges are better. He received a whole lot of pushback about that.
He should.
Well, I'm not in complete disagreement with him there. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, you have an exchange which, as you said, it has a giant target symbol. You're going to have a lot better payoff if you're targeting something that holds all these people's funds and trying to search for vulnerabilities there than going after 1 million people's individual accounts with like $100 here, $100 there. So obviously, it's a much larger target. On top of that, it's like early stages. There seem to be lots of holes in security that people are just maliciously like going after, trying to break through. If you have reputable exchanges, though, I'm not sure that is necessarily worse than holding your own funds. Like, there's obviously a big difference in morality and ethos. Me personally, I got into Bitcoin because I wanted to hold my own funds, so I don't actually keep money on an exchange. But that being said, when I first got into the space, I did not have the security knowledge to know how to do things correctly.
There's
and I know
two things he's talking about here.
Yeah.
He's saying not everyone is equipped to handle their own security, which is absolutely true.
Yeah.
And then he suggests something worse, which is putting on an exchange. Now, there might be custodial vault type services that are there to just keep things in cold storage. By its nature, an exchange is something that not only is a place people are always looking to, and it's like a giant honeypot, but it also has a lot of money going in and out of it constantly. So there's constant avenues for basically finding a way in. And also if you hack an exchange, you just move it to another exchange, and then like that's where people a lot of times dump their coins. They don't hold on to their coins and wait and see how many cups of coffee they can buy with them. They usually try to dump them so they can trade them for fiat or something. Yeah.
I'm gonna be so high on caffeine.
Welcome my world.
There's a few things that come into play here. One is you have all these mainnet token upgrades that happen all the time, and a lot of those actually happen on exchanges, so you got to put it on there even for a short time in terms of storage, right? So that's a minor thing, but that does happen. And look, Cryptopia was, let's be honest, it was like a D-grade exchange. It was notorious for being pretty rubbish when it comes down to it. The user interface wasn't very good, the security measures weren't awesome, as are now proven, of course, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And not to just dump on Cryptopia, New Zealand exchange, but still, that's the reality of the situation. They were never the top of the league, whereas Binance is the top of the league. I think Binance has something that not many other exchanges have. Binance, a long time ago, I think it was about 6 months ago, they started an insurance fund. So they're stacking up Binance coin in an insurance fund, and I think they keep, don't quote me on this number, but I think it's like 96 or 98% of the coins on Binance are kept in cold storage. So they've got a very small exposure in their hot wallets. And then they have this, basically every exchange that happens, they're putting a tiny amount of Binance token aside in their insurance chest, basically. So that if a hack does happen on that very small exposed percentage, they can cover it. It's not perfect by any means. And you shouldn't keep your money on an exchange. This is the point. You should be in charge of your own money, because exchanges go offline and all these different things. And I certainly do not recommend people to keep their money on exchanges, but I kind of, on the flip side, I see the problems that people have, and this is why I'm working on an education series to try and get people to take charge of their own money and all this stuff. But still, there are people who it's hard.
That's a great point. And having this blanket rule that treats all exchanges as equal is also not helping everyone. All exchanges are not equal, guys. They're very different, and the security practices across the board, vary considerably. So understanding that is important. But obviously, we're all on the same page. I'm sure we all store our own coins and our own security team. But that was interesting to see that. And obviously it was a bit of like a Binance push as well. Like, hey guys, start with us. We are not like other exchanges.
It cracks me up too, because cryptocurrency is still so new that there's very few actual threats against it. Like, very few people have the awareness to even think of this as an attack vector. I could get rich off of robbing this thing. But one thing that crypto people is stubborn and contrarian. And as soon as he goes out saying, "Oh, you're not going to hack me over here," they're just like, "Oh, want to bet?" Someone's going to dedicate their whole life into ruining that poor man's exchange and taking a bunch of money. And that's why you see like money being given back to exchanges later after they already destroyed everything. They're like, I got $100 million worth of stuff. You can have it back. I just wanted to show you that you're nothing. And so that's not a good thing for him to tweet. I mean, I don't know if that's going to be revenue positive for him in the long run.
Yeah. Actually, I had a programmer friend, and one of the things he told me, a Russian guy, and he's basically said this. He said, there's basically nothing that's unhackable. It's just a question of time. How long can it take to get hacked? And especially when it comes to something like an exchange, it will get there eventually. It's just, can they stay ahead of the hackers, basically?
Yeah, I remember when the Bitpay wallet, the hardware wallet came out and just said, he said it's the first unhackable hardware wallet. And within the week,
oh my God,
within the week, a 15-year-old kid was playing Doom on it. He was using the little thing to play games.
That's not like McAfee to make some hyperbolic statement that has no basis in reality, right? By the way, how is the McAfee decline going? Where are we in terms of price right now?
We're getting a show right now. That's what's happening.
Oh, I'm not sure I'm excited about that.
Yeah, also,
it's like a sick fascination,
Just stay away from his whale tweets. Those aren't the best.
Oh God. Yeah.
He's such
all
a
right.
weird dude. Anyway,
He's
moving on.
Very fun though. I mean, he's a fun guy, but just everything with a grain of salt, guys.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, so I got a power chat from Anonymous. Thank you, Anonymous. Who says, since the talk started on the subject of privacy, any opinions on the cash shovel coming to BCH? So this is something that's been in the works for a while. People have been talking about this, and it seems like it's a great move for the ecosystem to implement privacy in the BCH ecosystem. Do either of you, have you looked into this much at all?
Yes, I have, but I'll let CryptoLark go first.
What's the privacy implementation that they're doing?
So it's called Cash Shuffle, and it's just like a mixing. I
Got
presume.
it. Look, I think any major cryptocurrency moving forward is going to have some variety of privacy implementation. We see most of them moving towards that. I mean, Ethereum's got ZK snarks, Tron's looking at ZK snarks, Tezos is looking at ZK snarks, and on and on and on it goes. So I think they'll all have to have this at some point. So to see Bitcoin Cash bringing some implementation in, cool. Awesome. Totally all about it. So it's like it's a little different from coin mixing. It allows users to combine their transactions with others, like obfuscating where they came from. Like you were gonna.
Yeah. So
sorry.
It's very similar. It's almost identical it's very similar to what Dash uses. Dash's private send is a CoinJoin based variant. There's a few big differences though, which is, for example, Cash Shuffle relies on a single centralized server, or central server. Centralized is just like a dirty word. Whereas Dash has like the basically 5,000 different masternodes that are just purpose for that you can rely on. So it's a little bit of a much harder attack vector. Also, I believe Cash Shuffle does like a single mixing round. So here's what you do: you take a coin, you take your coins, you break them up into a few specific parts, and you mix them with, there's like three, so you have three spots, you have three participants, you mix each unit with the other people, and then that's one round. Now Dash just had the upgrade 0.13 upgraded that to 16 rounds. So it's significantly harder to trace that way. But if you're comparing like very opaque, straight up Bitcoin transactions to, very transparent, to something where you can't just follow the paper trail right away, it's a huge improvement. And I think that we're going to see non-privacy coins, as in coins without any kind of privacy feature, just really fall by the wayside when anyone actually starts to try to use this. Because if you think about it, your bank account is private. Anyone who knows the bank,
only the NSA is watching, guys.
Yes, there's certain bits, but that's the thing. It's certain bits of access. The bank knows. Whoever the government decides to shake them down, say how much money does she have, where she's sending it. Those people know, but the general public doesn't. If you're using Bitcoin to buy things online, you can have malware tracking not only the transactions, but associating them with your email and your name and your address and things like that, extrapolating your address together and figure out how much money you actually have in your wallet. And so, and associating to your name. And that's not, you can't do that with a bank account. The bank or whoever's controlling them, they have to go in. So Bitcoin transactions online can in some ways be less private than a bank account, and no one's going to be using that. No average user is going to be like, let me get on and get something that's worse than what I'm already using. So things like this are absolutely necessary, and I'm always welcoming more and more solutions, especially privacy solutions, especially things that can help people on things like mobile devices that they're more common to actually use in real life.
And this is something, so recently we had the anniversary of Hal Finney first tweeting about Bitcoin, and then soon after he put out his initial tweet, he then talked about privacy and said, we're adding privacy elements to Bitcoin, or we need to add privacy elements to Bitcoin. And it was interesting, like his immediate thought went there, and that was a lot of the talk that happened on the cryptography mailing list at the time. The main issue people had was that it was not anonymous, it was pseudonymous, and you can link transactions, you can follow a money trail.
Well, that's interesting. That was what, 2009?
Yeah.
Was that? And so in 2013, Evan Duffield, Dash's founder, which by the way, Dash just turns, you guys' time, it's already 5 years old. So that's a big milestone.
Happy birthday, Dash.
So, but just like same story as Ethereum, same story as Decred, went to the Bitcoin core developers and said, hey, love what you guys are doing. This thing's not private though. People can trace it. I have a bunch of ideas. And they're like, yeah, go away. So he went away, and that was like where Darkcoin, which then became Dash, came from. So now it's like, now people are caring about privacy. It's like, but some people, including like Hal Finney, who, don't some people call him Satoshi?
Yeah, a lot of people do.
It's hard. No one knows, but way back in the beginning knew what, not quite so way back in the beginning, but still a while ago, Evan knew. And then now people are seeing, this is a problem, because I was talking with Roger Ver today, and he said something about how one of the reasons to push for mass adoption as quickly as possible is to outpace malicious actors, like, for example, say governments, in basically getting it everywhere before they can figure out how to stop it.
Right.
And so that's the thing. We're seeing how notoriously slow the rest of the world is to catch up to things like how absolutely not private Bitcoin-based currencies were. And then now they're starting to catch up. And so it's good that there's already plenty of solutions out there and in the works before like a bunch of major things can happen, like tracing and things like that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've got a comment here from David. He says the government will shut down privacy coins. The government will not let you use them because once you pay taxes, all that stuff. I think that this is something that the governments just aren't going to be able to do. I remember there's an implementation that Monero either has just implemented or is looking at implementing in the future, where basically they're also going to hide the traffic through the router. So you're not actually going to be able to see that a Monero transaction is even taking place on that computer. So that's what they're looking at implementing next. So it's going to be basically impossible for governments to shut down, particularly privacy coins. I mean, because the tech will keep developing and it'll keep one step ahead of. Now, you might not be able to go to an exchange and easily buy it using fiat. They can potentially shut that down, because look at all the exchanges that want to be compliant, right?
Of course.
There will be that. But in terms of actual private transactions, you're going to have decentralized exchanges that are going to be running total privacy, easy exchanges. So they won't be able to stop them. They can't stop them, basically.
Yeah, and that's one of those things there's a lot of probabilities in there, and there's a lot of needle and haystack type things. There's a lot of other things. Governments will always find a way how to stop these kinds of things, and then a year later, those kinds of things will find a way to stay. It's the constant cat and mouse game. But more importantly, the government still prints. Most governments probably still print cash. Cash is used. Banks still launder money. The drug trade is still everywhere. Like, you can ban things. You can put a lid on them. You can stop a lot of it from happening.
What are you talking about? The war on drugs has been such a tremendous
success.
Yes, but that's exactly it. It's like
incarceration of victimless crimes and non-violent people. And the millions and billions and trillions of dollars that have been spent. Great.
So
great
what
work
the
there,
government can do is it can give you hell and ruin your life in a lot of ways.
They
And so
can, yeah.
sometimes if you're using these like if you're using a privacy coin, if you have an exchange built around it, or you raise a ton of money to develop it or whatever, you might be a target, you might suffer, you people around you, it might just, that comment might be true for you. Just as a whole, time marches on, things develop, and the faster things like government's not very efficient in my personal experience. So I don't think that they're going to be able to outpace the free market with unlimited sharing of knowledge across the whole world. I just don't.
No, I don't. I think one thing too that really comes into play here, I think it's a very common misconception with privacy coins that's only for like, drug dealers and terrorists and all these bad people, but actually look at like Zcash or any other coin that has privacy optional, right? There are times when you don't want people to know what your transaction was. And this is just like cash, except that when you have your money in a bank, the government knows every single thing that you've done. Whereas with privacy coins, you can have them be open and transparent. With Zcash, for example, you can have an open, transparent transaction, or you can have a shielded transaction that no one can see. That's the equivalent of using a cash transaction. So if you want to buy some kinky porn, or if you just want to buy something and have the government not know what it is, I want to go buy a bottle of water and not have the government know that I'm buying a bottle of water, well, you can do that. And so for the privacy thing is, people tend to interpret it as like the government's going to crack down on it, and they might because of the tax thing. There could be that situation, but overall, privacy is important. And for anyone who doesn't think privacy is important, you're probably one step away from thinking that your privacy is important.
So Crypto Lark, you actually just got your first power chat on Bitbacker. Welcome. Says so R Lamas B says, great to see you on Naomi's show, and he sent me a power chat saying, happy to pick Crypto Lark's first power chat. Thank you so much. That is awesome. I got another questions to go through too, but let's not spend too much longer on the questions because we've got heaps of news to report. But so I have Anthony Monero. Let me pull up his. Is always awesome. Thank you for being here. He asked, do we trust the new ledger working with Bluetooth? So this is something that I've discussed on a previous show with Zaphoid, Chris Karabats, who talks about how, there are vulnerabilities there, but they're so specific. Like, you need to be holding the device at a certain angle and need to know exactly where it's located. Like, all of these things need to coincide in order for this vulnerability to be exploited. But I'd love your take, you guys. Have you looked into this, and are you concerned about this?
So I have used Ledger and Trezor products before. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not that technical to where I could actually intelligently comment that. One thing I do know is it does kind of scare me to have like a Bluetooth type thing to where it's easier to make a mistake. It's easier to probably get a hack or something like that than just yanking out a cable and the whole thing goes dark. Just having that thing, having a device that can be powered on or whatever, it just, in general, and that was the thing with the Bitpay. Bitpay was also I believe a Wi-Fi based hardware wallet, or still is trying to be, and you just get right in. Like, it's not, the attacks aren't as, a lot of the attacks I've noticed on hardware wallets tend to be ones where someone gets a possession of the wallet and actually can like physically plug it into stuff, and the just the ability to just unplug it and it's just dead is something that makes me feel a lot better about using those. Now, when you start to have something that doesn't have that antiquated little power cable that just snip and it's out, I start to wait for a bunch of people to have their lives ruined, their fortunes lost, and then they fix it before I trust something like that. Like, it's still too new. Someone else is going to go down. It's not going to be me.
Oh, that's such a dark but kind of practical way to look at that.
Well, you have to be careful when it comes down to it. But honestly, I don't think that Ledger would have brought a product to market without having done incredibly extensive testing on it. And once the product's out in the wild, all kinds of crazy stuff can happen that you just can't anticipate in, a closed test situation. But Ledger's got a lot on the line. Ledgers have some very big backers who don't want to see them put out a bad product, and they have a reputation to keep up. So I can understand the trepidations around this, but at the same time, I feel like it would be crazy for Ledger to put out something which was not robust, incredibly robust. Basically.
Let's keep going. We've got another power chat. Someone asked about the Wormhole, asking you, CryptoLark, actually. May I ask what your opinion on Wormhole Cash is, especially seeing as you are well up on tokens, and are you sponsored by Binance? Is his question. So just a comment on Wormhole. I actually did a live stream with Gabriel last week about Wormhole. This interview, like going in depth. This is really exciting. Where's this leading? And as soon as he got off that call, we found out that Bitmain had actually cut all of the people, or cut the team that was working on that. So Wormhole apparently is no more. They haven't officially announced this. They haven't officially said that it's going dark. But there are other projects, similar projects, that they've been equally splitting their time between, that I think now the whole workforce is going to be moving over towards. But that was news to me. Like, I put out this video, everyone's like, oh, interesting, Wormhole, I'm going to look into this. And then I started getting messages from people saying, and it's gone. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I wrote to Gabriel, I'm like, what's going on? We just talked about this thing, and he's like, yeah, so news is coming on that I will be keeping you guys updated with. If you have anything to add, CryptoLark, then
I've got nothing to add. I'm unfamiliar with what Wormhole is and what Wormhole does. Or
cool. Yeah, well, it's like it's a fork of Omni, so it's second layer the token issuance and things like that on Bitcoin Cash. But I'll keep you guys updated what the next thing is. There's
so many things going on all the time. But by the way, I'm not sponsored by Binance, but that would be awesome, CZ. If you want to sponsor me, I'm here. I'm ready.
Yeah, me too, actually. In fact, if anyone wants to sponsor
exchange
me,
a little bit more first. You got to earn it.
God damn it. Let's provide some real value then, guys. We may as well start now. So moving on, let's talk about the Ethereum Classic attack that happened. We had a 51% attack. I reported on that last week, but there are new developments there. So actually, Michael Casey wrote a really interesting article about this, about the larger message that this hack could be sending. The idea that, like, I've always had beef with Ethereum Classic, obviously. I mean, when the fork happened to begin with, like, not a fan of that fork. I feel like it should not have been rolled back. Like, this was we got away from central banks because we didn't like the bailouts, right? And I feel like this was a bailout of sorts that happened. But that being said, the fact that people were still looking at Ethereum Classic when there really not much active development happening on there, and not a large community there, people saying, well, it's basically the same as Ethereum, but it's not. There's like a remarkable difference in terms of community support, in terms of development, in terms of keeping up to date and making sure that there are no vulnerabilities. And that's what Michael Casey is sort of suggesting in this article, saying that, when you have ecosystems that are not as popular, they are going to be susceptible to attacks like this. And we're going to see it more and more frequently.
Yeah, this is very interesting to me because 2019 is going to be the year of the 51% attack. There's going to be a lot of coins are going to be wrecked. It's not going to be a pretty sight, just because people are starting to figure out that the costs are not actually that high. The other thing is, I mean, let's be honest. Who would want to have a coin sharing the same algorithm as a big gorilla up the coin market cap rankings? Ethereum Classic versus Ethereum. I mean, so that's the thing, is, doesn't Bitcoin Cash have like 4% of BTC's hash power or something similar to that?
Something like that. BSV has around the same.
So pretty much a single BTC miner, a single major BTC miner, can at any point just completely decimate either of those two chains.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, now let me put in the rephrasing of, there are some checkpoints in Bitcoin ABC or Bitcoin Cash, whatever you want to call it, right now. They're working on something called Avalanche, which is a way of basically increasing the chances of like a first seen block to be actually in and preventing against 51% attacks. So it might not be as easy, but it's just like the knife hanging over any of those coins in Ethereum Classic. I mean, there's a crypto51.app is this famous site that just says, oh, everything can be 51% attacked or whatever. And one seemingly arbitrary metric is how much of the hash power can be rented from NiceHash, this one site.
Well, now
And,
there's the verb.
Nice
Something
hashable.
is nice hashable. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen these things fluctuate wildly, but at present it says Ethereum Classic is 92% nice hashable. So I don't know if I think that's 92% of 51% of the hash rate. So it's still basically child's play to attack this network without just having a single Ethereum miner just deciding to switch over. I mean, it's like, what is it, 9 terahashes to Ethereum's 168 terahashes? Like, just take that 168 down to 159 and just whack, just smash it. Like, it's so easy. I don't really cry too much for Ethereum Classic because it doesn't seem like that much of a live project to begin with at this stage, or especially right after most of the dev team just kind of went bankrupt and kind of went away, which also makes you think, if you look at CoinMarketCap rankings and just think, oh, this is the better coin because it's like higher up here. It's like, no. Oh, Ethereum Classic up 3.6% today. Fantastic. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So, and seeing all this, there's a very interesting article by David Vorick of the SiaCoin team, who wrote this fantastic article, second of an article on proof of work and on how easily centralized it can become, but also about, for example, how ASIC resistant coins are actually much, much easier to attack because of the way, because of the hash rate marketplaces it can develop. And also thinks about, how ASIC resistance is just never going to actually be a thing because of how easy, because they're actually in the mining hardware business. So those two articles on mining are fascinating reads, and I would highly recommend them. And it just will make you look at any of these things and just be like, wow, I can't believe these are worth anything. Now, it's interesting to note, in the same vein as Bitcoin Cash's Avalanche, Dash is working on version 0.14, which will have something called chain locks, which will essentially make you need to have 51% of masternodes as well in order to be able to attack the network.
One thing that is also interesting with the 51% attack, just to jump in, because we've got like a bunch of things to cover. So regarding the Ethereum Classic attack, so there was a giant fee spike. Within 24 hours, the blockchain, the fees rose up to $6.10, up nearly 800% from the day before. So, I mean, do we speculate that this is just because a bunch of people were wanting to move these coins? Is that what happened there?
That's what I think is most likely. Every time I've seen it, especially with Ethereum-based coin, Ethereum Classic, whenever there's been a giant fee spike, it's been a run on something like an ICO.
Cool. And so the other thing is just the final thing on the Ethereum Classic, just before we move topics. So one exchange says that the 51% attacker returned $100,000 worth of Ethereum Classic. What's going on there? Is it like a little note attached saying, "Oh, here you guys go. Felt really bad.
We're sorry."
It was returned to gate.io. They said Saturday that 100K was returned. They said they tried to contact the 51% attacker but haven't received any reply. They said, we still don't know the reason. If the attacker didn't run it for profit, he might be a white hacker who wanted to remind people of the risks in blockchain consensus and hashing power security. I mean, that is a good point as well. That sort of stuff does happen as well. What are your thoughts? Do we think this is a white hacker?
There's a lot of possibilities
of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities when it comes down to it. It's certainly interesting that they return a portion of the funds, I guess. But when you look at it, it was, they were calling it a chain reorganization versus a straight, 51% attack, trying to take over the network, so to speak. Just someone, selfish mining and all this stuff. But to see that, I don't know. There's so much insider baseball in crypto. You never know. It could have been a white hat hacker. It could have been somebody who was doing it, but one of the guys knew one of the guys and said, dude, you just hacked $100,000 from my exchange. Oh, is that your exchange? I'm sorry. I'll give you your money back and I'll go over to the other exchange and steal money from them. This kind of stuff happens, Wow. It's just, there's so much insider baseball in crypto when you start to, dive into it. It's wild. Who
Yeah,
knows?
for sure. All right. Well, let's move on. Anonymous sent through a power chat and said, "But Jihan and Roger have huge hash power. Is it not reasonable to assume that they can move hash power from BTC?" I'm sure that it is reasonable to assume that they could do that. I'm not sure, but I want to. If you guys have a quick word, but then we're going to move topics away from Ethereum.
I think the thing is right now is that with Bitmain in particular, they've lost so much money on Bitcoin Cash, and that's not trying to bash Bitcoin Cash. I think that's the reality. Bitmain went big; they have 1 million Bitcoin Cash in their stash, and mining Bitcoin Cash right now, they're just not making a lot of money on it, and they're mining Bitcoin. This is the thing. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Bitmain's got all that hash power, and they're not mining Bitcoin Cash with all of it. They're mining Bitcoin. Yeah, they might argue they've got enough to sustain the network, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but it could be attacked like that. Like we were saying, Bitcoin Cash is not anywhere near as secure because it is not the top coin on its algorithm right now.
Right.
Yes, and you should always be the top coin on your algorithm. I just do not understand the copy paste of an algorithm, and especially, again, because of the mining situation. I would think that Bitcoin Cash is more insulated against that than many others, probably because the hope would be a flippening eventually, and then just the same miner just kind of shift to mining a different coin, and it just all turns out okay. But
I definitely think that was the reasoning. Like, a lot of people are in it for the long game there, and honestly, Roger Ver came in at the last minute during the hash war and kind of saved the day, right? Like, I think that he saved Bitcoin Cash. I'm not sure it would have survived if he hadn't have come in and with a lot of resources there. So it's interesting. It's really fascinating to watch these hash wars play out. And we're new in this ecosystem. It's early days. This is the first time we've really had something tested like that. That was, it was very interesting to watch. But
scary, but bring it on.
Yeah,
it's fun
exactly.
to see. This is how we move forward.
And that's how we get more robust as a system as well.
Right.
So every time that this doesn't fail, it's just further confirmation that this is something that is durable and sustainable. So very interesting.
Marketplace of ideas.
And I know that I said this was the last Ethereum thing, but this was the last Ethereum Classic thing, which is very different. So Ethereum's Constantinople upgrade, that was delayed due to a security vulnerability. So that was again news that was announced this week. Do we know, have you guys looked into what this vulnerability was?
No, they were relatively, I guess, tight-lipped about it. It's Ethereum bug and Ethereum hack are very common word pairings. And probably one of those reasons for that, I think, is just because of the complexity of the thing. Yeah. It's so many things can happen, which is, why wouldn't they, right? But because so many things can happen, so many things can go wrong, and just we found this horrific hack. Oh, this happens. I mean, some friends of mine run an ICO project that got decimated in the parody hack. So I know exactly secondhand kind of relationship. But yeah, that's exactly. I mean, generally I'd say, you should wait until your software is more secure before more tested before putting it out there. But just being Ethereum, I don't think it's ever going to be enough. I think you just have to just roll with the punches, roll with the hacks.
So they've looked at the vulnerability, and the project's core developers reached the conclusion that it would take too long to fix the bug prior to the hard fork, so that's why it's delayed. Apparently, it's called a re-entrancy attack. So the vulnerability essentially allows people to re-enter the same function multiple times without updating the user about this. So you could essentially be withdrawing funds forever, is actually how the CTO of blockchain analytics firm Data has explained it. So he talked to CoinDesk and he said, imagine that my contract has a function which makes a call to another contract. If I'm a hacker, I'm able to trigger function while the previous function is still executing. I might be able to withdraw funds. So that's essentially what the issue was. Do we have a new date on when this fork is going to happen now?
I haven't seen a date update on that, but to be honest, I'm not surprised. Nothing about this surprises me. I mean, when we're talking about upgrading Ethereum, it's a monumental task when you realize what's at stake here. I mean, there's a multi-billion-dollar blockchain, and any little mistake like this could bring it down. So I'm all about the delay. I'm not surprised by any means that there's a delay. I mean, it's kind of the joke now within the crypto community, like, another Ethereum delay. Yeah, okay.
Right. So we've still got heaps of stuff to cover, but let's just run through these real quick. So Consensys invests in 2 crypto startups to lead VCs into Ethereum ecosystem. They're pretty interesting projects, so I just wanted to mention them. So $1 million is going into the Paris-based crypto wallet and trading platform Coin House, and an undisclosed amount has gone into the encryption-centric browser Tenta. So Tenta is pretty interesting. Apparently, they're having a built-in VPN, ad block, and full data encryption. So something like that seems interesting. That Consensys is investing in it. I wonder if there's going to be some sort of a token issued there. I haven't looked into the project too much, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it.
I think what's interesting here is that Consensys is investing in projects because there was a lot of talk. You know how people love to say, it's dead, it's all over. See, we told you, look, they had to lay off staff. Like, it's a business. They're running a business at Consensys, and they had to lay off staff, but that doesn't mean they're out of money. Doesn't mean they're not investing in things. That means they're reprioritizing projects and things like this. So it's actually, not to comment on either project specifically, they both sound very interesting, but I'm actually more encouraged to see that Consensys is continuing to invest in projects, continuing to throw money out there, because it just shows that, proves all the haters wrong. The Consensys is not dead, nor is Ethereum. Yeah, things happen, but they keep moving forward.
Absolutely. So BitPay says that it processed over $1 billion in crypto payments last year. Another thing, when we're talking about these layoffs, when we're talking about this bear market, we're talking about how terrible things are at the moment. But then getting news like this, that's pretty promising, it seems. That's a huge amount of payments right there. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I forget who I was talking to today about that. BitPay was my original, my first love in terms of that thing that you can just pitch to. You can pitch to merchants and you can just pay with Bitcoin and they can keep some of it or none of it, and it's all good. Like, it was that dream. And then over time, first off, they implemented those awful payment code things that no wallet could pay to. And so it became just completely unusable for regular, not completely, but largely unusable for just regular payments and stuff. That's why you don't really see very many, mom and pop merchants using it. Now, I don't know. Clearly, if I hear Overstock uses them, which would explain a whole lot, because especially Overstock has a bunch of money.
Other major customers include Dish, an online organization of security experts called HackerOne, and also the U.S. state of Ohio, which is where
Overstock was paying the taxes.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
That's how they're doing that.
So that may be the involvement of Overstock there in Ohio.
Yeah, just same thing as Bitcoin's use has probably shifted. In the beginning, it was probably a lot of I'm just buying my thing here, I'm just sending a little bit here and there, and that's pretty much dead for the most part. But then you got a lot of people just saying, I'm going to buy my Lambo I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to say big transfer, I'm going to do it for larger things. So probably the value transmitted might have gone up. So I would hazard a guess that BitPay's processed far fewer small transactions than in the early days, but their overall USD value of transactions has gone up as they've moved on to larger clients.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Let's move on. So new WordPress publishing platform will offer blockchain features. That's exciting as well. It's actually partnered with Consensys again, talking about partnerships, and Consensys still working out there despite all their layoffs recently. So WordPress is launching a new publishing platform backed by Google, Ethereum development studio Consensys, and others. So this seems kind of interesting. I mean, having a WordPress site, Ethereum has always struck me as being the WordPress of crypto. It's kind of this plug and play model. It made things a lot easier to create coins, to do all kinds of things on the platform. But now actual WordPress is potentially integrating some sort of Ethereum element. So that's kind of interesting. So Civil Media is behind this, and I mean, I'm pretty interested in where this goes.
I think we'll see a lot of interesting implementations coming out, and this is just one of the many. Anything that's going to make it easier for people. I was looking at that, and it's got something to do with the civil, blockchain-based journalism stuff, and helping to make WordPress websites specifically around that topic. But we're going to see this for everything. We're going to have all kinds of stuff backed up on blockchain, and the use cases are just getting started when it comes down to it. And I'm so happy to see anything that makes it more user-friendly, because it hasn't been user-friendly enough. And we're asking people to do too much of a learning curve when we're trying to get everyone to come over from, tap your card at the bank to here's a cryptographic address and, pay the miner fees and all this stuff. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talking about like stable coins, and let's talk a little bit about Gemini. So such an interesting, I don't know where to start, guys. So there have been a lot of advertising campaigns all about like the fully regulated, the fully government friendly, like all of it. They're going that track, right? It's very clear what they're aiming to do there. They want to be the one that's seen to be playing by the rules, being very compliant, being trustworthy, because, regulation equals trustworthiness, apparently. So it is interesting that they actually just, their stable coin, sorry, but let's go to the Gemini one. Their stable coin, they've been talking about like the discounts and the arbitrage that they created there. But then on the same note of stable coins, we've got Circle's USDC stable coin just released a report from their auditors saying it's fully backed. I mean, stable coins are an interesting topic. We've talked a lot about them on the show, talked a lot about Tether as well. Everyone seems to have beef with Tether. Now that this audit report has come out about Circle's coin, it makes you wonder why it was so hard for Tether to get an audit done. I always kind of gave them the benefit of the doubt, like this is clearly a very difficult thing. Auditors don't understand crypto. They don't want to put their name on things if they don't understand it. But then Circle's kind of come out and said, oh yeah, here's this report. So like,
show of hands, who follows Bitfinex on Twitter?
right. So what do you guys think about Gemini stablecoin, about USDC, about this recent news of the arbitrage and the audits and all of that?
I think it's fantastic overall. I mean, there's been so many, thank God, honestly, because Tether was this like sort of Damocles hanging over the crypto markets at any time when everything's going to come crashing down on us and the markets are going to be wrecked and all these things by Tether's insolvency. Because like you said, why can't you just get an audit? It'd be simple enough. But unfortunately, it never happened. But now we have stable coins which are being audited. They have their own flaws and whatever, but they have to be compliant. It's such a dirty word, compliancy, isn't it?
It really is. Like
obedient.
Yeah, it means that half our budget is going towards dealing with all the hurdles that the government's put in front of us, rather than going towards product development, consumer satisfaction, efficacy in our product, all of that stuff. Like, it just, God, I just hear compliancy and I just think money drain. Like, just a hole, a black hole where you put all this fund because people have been creating hurdles for you.
Well, of course, stable coins are a sign of the times. I remember, I'm kind of old school. My old favorite stablecoin was Bitcoin, but then it became unstable. And then, because I mean, seriously, do you remember back in the day when people was like 90% market dominance or whatever, and people would like take their alt spikes and then just put it to their safe haven of BTC, and then they'd see a good deal and they'd throw it back, and they would use Bitcoin as that. And I'm sure that still largely happens, but then it became not so great of a store of value. And then people were like, we need something a little bit more pegged to some fake money. And so, I mean, Tether, of course, did its whole thing. And then people were again, sort of Damocles again. But now we have decentralization, right? Now we have a whole bunch of different things. So I wouldn't it be great if you could convert and this might be a business idea, feel free to take it for someone else. wouldn't it be great if you could convert your balance into a mixed bag of stable coins, like all 10 of them, whatever, who cares? Just like you got like 5,000, you cash out like a Bitcoin or two, and it's just like $5,000 or whatever, and then you just throw them into all these random stable coins. So if like one of them dumps, then you still got most of it there. And so I don't know, you might see something like that happen. You might see some service providers allow you to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like stable coins is just huge arbitrage opportunity there, as we've seen. Like, I know a lot of people who take advantage of that because, as you said, stable coins are not always that stable. So generally, especially if there's liquidity in the market, they kind of balance back out, which is great. And that's why we love this arbitrage happening. But that sounds like a really interesting idea. That's free for anyone in the chat who wants to take that idea.
Jake in CryptoArc's chat already says you like my idea now. So
absolutely. So feel free.
Go for it.
Yeah, send Joelle a nice thank you tip for this multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar idea. You can go to his Bitbacker page to do that, guys. Send your love to him there. So I want to talk about a few laws and things to do with regulation, government that are happening right now. So Wyoming, they have just introduced legislation that would allow you to issue tokenized stock certificates using blockchain. It's called the Corporate Stock Certificates Token. It's proposing an amendment that actually permits the tokenization of digital share certificates instead of paper versions. So making it all digital, putting it on the blockchain. That seems interesting. As we know, Wyoming has been at the forefront of regulation due to the likes of Caitlin Long and awesome people like that who have just been trailblazers and just setting up this amazing atmosphere for people involved in the blockchain space to be developing and creating. We've also got a US lawmaker, Tom Emmer, who wants to create a safe harbor for certain crypto startups. The idea is that if there are, if they're not storing any coins, like we know that blockchain is not necessarily currency. And we knew that when the BitLicense came into effect, and that's what everyone tried to tell the lawmakers, that, you're trying to impose this kind of money transmission title on all of this technology that doesn't have anything to do with that. So Tom Emmer is trying to boost crypto companies by making exceptions to this for firms who don't store any coins. So that seems very interesting. And the other one I just want to mention is Vermont, who they're launching a blockchain pilot for the insurance industry, which is kind of interesting. The idea is that it will examine blockchain tech's potential in digital record keeping and registration and regulatory processes. So this is all pretty interesting. Jim Condos, who's the Vermont's Secretary of State, actually said this pilot will allow us to examine whether or not the application of blockchain technology for digital record keeping can improve aspects of the state regulatory process. So while I disagree that I don't want regulation to get better in terms of, maybe we could be more thorough and have more of it if we do this, I do definitely see how blockchain tech could be interesting there in terms of record keeping and not allowing a centralized agency to hold these records. That power could be distributed. That kind of seems interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think we'll see. There's always lots of great applications. I do think I always find that someone's gonna do that on a blockchain, and I always start thinking to, we're gonna have Krispy Kreme donuts on a blockchain or whatever. It's what?
The next big thing, man.
Yeah, but more importantly, it's the how is what I'm looking at and the why. Why did you choose blockchain of all kinds of different databases out there? Why did you choose that one as the one to do? How is it going to be run? Do you have, if it's a blockchain, do you have miners running it? Is a proof of stake? Do you have that? How do you?
Is it
Yeah. How secure is it? Is it how is it better from just having your own internal ledger? I want to know that reason, especially because people aren't saying, oh, there's this blockchain that's the most stable, whatever, publicly. We're going to do a token on that blockchain. No, we're going to do our own blockchain. Everyone who wants to do their own blockchain for everything is just
well, I mean,
right.
companies who are kind of finding solutions to that. So Varus, I find pretty interesting because the idea is that you could have public blockchains as a service. That's kind of cool. The idea that you could have something that exists just for one particular function, like a particular poll, but because they notarize everything to Komodo, which in turn notarizes everything to Bitcoin, it provides this added security feature. So you can actually have specialized blockchains for these things. I mean, I completely agree with you. The idea of having a blockchain that exists in perpetuity, that is not notarized to anything else, that, like, how do you incentivize people to keep this chain working? It seems so stupid. And I think that, lawmakers, I give them a thumbs up for trying to be, keeping up with this tech. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
we should look
breaking
into.
out the skateboard,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're gonna do an Instagram chat,
hello,
guys.
fellow crypto nerds.
I'm a blockchain stan. Like, it's like, oh, guys, don't go there.
Block.
Yeah.
But,
well, and by the way, that's the next kind of white hat hacker kind of idea, is find every single person who has actually applied a useless blockchain and find a way to 51% attack or otherwise just disrupt and destroy it.
I mean, isn't that the idea of shark pool, that they're just going after all of these chains to try and make them obsolete and say, hey guys, we told you so, this is a stupid idea?
Yeah, well, the idea behind shark pool is just to
be assholes?
I don't know. It's just to make it's just to give Craig Wright a little shark plushie that he goes to sleep, kisses before he goes to sleep.
We're gonna get you.
Just,
we're gonna come attack
just
you.
so he can sleep better. He just
I'm coming for you, Roger.
Like, I got sharks eating up all the shit coins. Yeah.
Just to weigh in a little bit on the topic of Vermont, actually, because I found it to be really, really interesting that Vermont has been at the forefront for a while. They actually got properties on the blockchain a while ago.
That's probably because of Bernie Sanders, because he's such an economically literate guy. Probably.
It was actually. Right? I don't think it had anything to do with Bernie. It was more to do with the governor at the time.
I definitely wasn't being serious there.
No, but I mean, who knows? But anyway, it was a project called Proppy, and they were getting Vermont to run properties on the blockchain, do land registry. And while, the United States doesn't have some giant problem with land registry, basically everyone can prove that they own their property in the USA. As a test case, it's fantastic. Now it's running on Ethereum. You don't need to make your own blockchain to do that, because then it's, it's like we're saying, it could be open to attack and all these different things. But if actually you have it running on Ethereum, the use case for third world countries, and Proppy is actually pushing that. They're in conversations with a lot of developing nations that could really use this technology, because it's a mind-boggling number. It's 1 in 3 people globally can't prove they own their property or something like this. It's just it's out of control.
If you read DeSoto's The Mystery of Capital, he goes into that about why capitalism succeeds in the first world, but kind of fails everywhere else. And part of that was because the lack of access to capital because of like land ownership or otherwise their codified property rights. Yeah. So it's interesting. Of course, wouldn't be great if you're trying to register your plot of land at the same time as a whole bunch of people are trying to get their CryptoKitties in. And then it just, that takes, again, this is why it's all evolutionary.
Scale it.
Yeah, scale it. I need a scaled blockchain on my desk by tomorrow, damn it. It's like one of those kinds of things of where we're still very early in the game and it takes a little while longer until one of these things happens.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Right. And it's interesting to watch Patrick Byrne. He's doing a lot of work, and he was working with DeSoto on this. I think that he's going like his own track now. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what he comes up with there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like sometimes right now in crypto, we're basically what we're doing is we're working on like dial-up internet, and we're expecting like, I don't know, live streams to happen on dial-up internet. And it's not compatible right now, but we will get to that, fiber level of internet. Yeah. Put that in a blockchain idea, right? But we're not there yet. We're getting there. We're moving there all the time. We're getting better and better all the time. More blockchains are coming on, more ideas, more technology, more privacy tech, more scaling tech. It's all coming into play. It's just a question of when it actually gets implemented.
So 2 more topics that I just want to quickly brush over because we are running out of time here. So Ford is looking into blockchain to look at like the supply chain and to make sure that can't be manipulated. And they think that it could help fight child labor. So this is an interesting topic that you wanted to chat about, Crypto Lark. So it's to do with cobalt mines and just monitoring cobalt supplies.
Yeah, well, that's a fascinating conversation overall. With cobalt or any other potential conflict mineral, whether we talk about diamonds or all these different things. But to see the big car companies taking it on is really interesting, because one thing that a lot of people may not know is that almost every single car has the potential that some part of that's been made using slave labor, because of the way that they source the minerals and the different steel components and things like this, and the charcoal and all these different things. The supply chain is very, very opaque, and the car manufacturers have
that, do they? Like, sorry to interrupt you there. Like, we don't think that like slave labor is rampant across the world. It's
bigger than it's ever been before in history. Right now, there are more slaves on the world now at this very moment than there was at any point. If you take all the history of the transatlantic slave trade and you put it all together, there's more slaves right now than all that history combined, which is mind-boggling. And it goes across everything from sex slaves to, forced labor slaves and household slaves and, agricultural slaves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Big story. But to actually stamp this out, it really comes down to the big corporations, because they're the ones who have the money and power to actually do it. When it comes to a regular consumer, I'm going to go out and buy my car. I have no idea where the minerals came from. I have no idea where the minerals came from for my battery. They say they've got systems in place, but do they really? Could I verify that? Is that an open, transparent ledger? No, it's all opaque right now, but to see that actually being verifiable, that's pretty cool. And a lot of people still won't care, but there will be people who care. And the few people that do care will make sure that it doesn't happen. Right. Because it shouldn't be happening. It's 2019. We have slaves in the world. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's crazy. So the idea is like, and also earlier, I think last year, so the world's second largest diamond mining company joined Tracker, which is a blockchain-based supply chain monitoring system. And it was developed by the diamond mining giant De Beers Group. So that's really interesting. There are projects like Tracker that are developed to make sure that we know where things are sourced, and it can be great for supply chain monitoring, just keeping things ethical. If we don't want to see a world where slavery exists, you have to vote with your purchasing power, for example. So if there are companies right now, they are incentivized to look into this stuff. If they can actually verify that they have ethically sourced their material, this could be a great way to improve their market share, for example, from their personal incentivization. So that's very interesting to look at blockchain tech helping in those types of areas.
Yeah, and it'll get to the point where every company has to do it, because if one company starts doing it, people will say, what about your cars then? Are your cars made using slave labor?
Yeah, it's just market demand. I think will start to insist on this sort of stuff.
You could see like having instead of having like a blockchain reader app instead of like a QR code scanner, and you just go up to that, kumquat or whatever in the grocery store and just go beep. Oh yeah, this is legit. And then you can kind of verify things on the blockchain. You just go and scan your diamonds, and it gives you like the 12% slavery, and if that's acceptable to you, then you can go get it or not. Or, I don't know, maybe a little cavalier with that, but it's
slavery acceptance level. Like, oh, I'm okay with like 5% slavery. More than that, I feel weird.
Or just like don't get out of the diamond industry entirely. But that's a different subject.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a racket, guys. Not worth it. Go plastic, right? But if anyone wants to send me gifts, I would accept those too. Otherwise, Bitbacker is also an option. I'll post my link there as well, just so you know, I'm giving you guys options.
Now, Bitcoin Diamond, that's another story entirely.
Bitcoin Diamond. Oh, now you're talking my language there. And finally, the other topic you wanted to bring up, Crypto Lark. So there's a lot of talk out there about environmental concerns with Bitcoin and proof of work in general. And I actually had a conversation. So at New Year's Eve this year, I found the one person at this New Year's Eve party who knew anything about Bitcoin. And I'm like, oh, so I just sat down and just talking, and all my friends kind of walking past, and I'd be like, oh, hey, come talk to us. We're talking about Bitcoin. And they'd be like, oh, And they just like, well, I with this guy, but like the main thing he was concerned of, and the main thing that has stopped him from really getting interested is environmental concerns. And not everyone shares these environmental concerns, but if this is a big factor stopping people from being interested in cryptocurrency, then it's definitely worth talking about. The idea of proof of work is very energy intensive, but then on the other side of things, you've got a lot of incentivization to find cheaper costs. So green energy, for example, a lot of miners looking down that route. Yep. And then different hashing algorithms or different ways of verifying blockchain. Like you've got proof of stake is another interesting thing that people are developing, and it's getting better and better. And people would argue that it's perhaps not as secure as proof of work yet, but definitely some great breakthroughs coming through there.
Yeah, that particular article I linked you to was it was interesting because basically it's a typical media hatchet job of Bitcoin. Yeah. And the whole article was based on ignoring certain things, right, choosing a certain narrative. And we see this repeated time and time and time and time again. And yes, there is a conversation to be had about the power use of the proof of work networks. I get it. It's a real conversation to be had, but 80% of Bitcoin mining is done using renewable energy in places like China, where we see Bitcoin mining happen. Like, okay, sure, China uses a lot of coal and stuff, but they're also the biggest pusher towards moving towards renewables. And most of the Bitcoin mining happening in China is actually happening on renewables as well. So the reason I wanted to particularly mention that is that everybody, just when you're thinking about Bitcoin mining, really try to find the source and what is the information they're talking about, because the move in Bitcoin mining is towards renewables, because it's infinitely cheap. You get the solar panels up and running, and then you have free energy.
And again, like that's the situation where you have incentives aligning. That's what we want to see. That's great, And if mining could even trigger looking into more efficient energy mining, and looking into green energy, for example. If people are like, well, I want to make a lot of money from Bitcoin, it's very energy intensive. They're going to be looking for better ways to do this, more efficient ways. Right. This actually could be a good thing for people who are concerned about the environment.
Damn straight. No, the funny thing is, I feel like a lot of the times when this kind of red herring is brought up about, Bitcoin mining uses all this energy. Okay, but we can bring out all the other whataboutisms. What about the top 100 companies? What about the military industrial complex? What about the traditional bank infrastructure? What about gold mining, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the animal agriculture industry, and all these other things? Like Bitcoin mining, that's the thing you're stuck on. Everything else, that's all cool.
Well, it does seem like another... As you said at the start, just the FUD that is all around crypto, and the different narratives that we've seen the media take. So we've seen an evolution in the smear campaigns and the attacks on crypto. This is something they do not want, because this is something that banks do not want. This is something governments do not want. And it started out being like, oh, drug deal. Well, it started out being like, oh, this is magic internet money. This is ridiculous. Let's ignore it. It's just for nerds. And then it was, oh my God, bad things are happening. You've got drug dealers. You've got money laundering. Then it evolved to oh my God, you've got sex slaves who are being hurt because of this. It's like, well, actually, if you're thinking about sex slaves, one of the worst things about being a sex slave, going to a country where they take away your resources, where you have no access to money, where you have no passport, where, crypto could actually be great for someone in that situation and actually help them out. But then it evolved. And I think the new narrative is environmental concerns. And you're right, it is a red herring, and it completely misses all of the important things about this industry, all of the pros that happen, all of the competing industries that it will make obsolete, all of the energy drain that's happening for these non-efficient systems that we're going to soon supplant, completely replace. I mean, it really bothers me, the very one-dimensional track that media outlets cover with this sort of reporting.
That's it.
Absolutely. Any final words there, Joelle?
One thing I notice is there's a lot of comparison issues with proof of work in mining, where they don't compare it versus how much does it cost to produce cash, as in from getting all the materials, agree at that, how much does it cost to run all the bank servers, etc. How much does it cost to, for the Pentagon to lose a few trillion? I mean, wait, that's something else. Sorry. How much does it cost to do just about all the things that happen? And then you start realizing, oh, the especially if you start putting a lot of mining farms in cold weather places, like, I mean, right now it's like, I don't know, it has not gotten above 0 centigrade all week pretty much. And it's like, hey, crypto winter, why not run some mining rigs, keep yourself warm and toasty? So you'll find some of that. There are also
friends in Kiev who told me that, these crazy Ukrainians I met at a conference last year, who told me that they do that. They have the heaters are just mining rigs in their apartment. It's just awesome. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I mean, like, why wouldn't you do that? Like, what's the matter with doing something like that? So also, ASICs are becoming more and more energy efficient. I think I remember one of the new Dash ASICs like used a significantly reduced cost. Also, you start thinking about maybe not applicable to Bitcoin if Bitcoin wants to stay exactly the same, but if you have like a hybrid model, for example, like a Decred or Dash type model, then the idea of paying for security, right, is to pay to become more secure. What if you can find other ways of finding security that allow you to not have to burn as much energy? So, for example, not everything in proof of work mining, or like a proof of work proof of stake kind of combo, where it's like you're twice as secure, like whatever. It's hard to put numbers, but twice as secure for half as much energy.
Right.
So there's going to be constant things like that, constant things improving. There's basically, I don't see this as really a problem long term.
Funny thing is, look at the innovation we've seen in crypto in the last even couple of years. And then let's look at the last 50 years of banking. What innovation have we seen?
Yeah, right, exactly.
I mean, I can take a picture of a check, or I mean, when I had a bank account, I could, and then you email it and to take up the piece of paper.
Why does America still have checks? At least I'm going to give Australia credit that no one used checks for like 20 years. And in America, you have like electronic bank transfer, which means they print out a physical check and send it to someone on your behalf. Like, guys, come on, this is what happens.
Yeah,
when you have a monopoly on like the money supply, when you have a cartel who basically has a direct line of credit to the Federal Reserve. It's a terrible
yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that the US is a little bit more in the dark ages than the rest of the world, which the rest of the world's still in the dark ages because they're not in crypto, but more in the dark ages in the financial thing. For example, there's services like in Australia, there's Living Room of Satoshi where you can actually pay your bills with cryptocurrency. You don't have these things here because the banks will just shut down everyone trying to do a service like that. There is no such thing here.
Yeah,
and there's
Yeah, I chatted to some people yesterday in a live stream about Living Room of Satoshi in Australia. That's awesome. They were also saying that Dash is pretty big here. I didn't know that Dash had a really great community. But just to wrap up, so Joel, you had an announcement about Dash, and we'll close up on that.
Yeah, well, on Monday, Dash released version 0.13, which is most notably the first plank in the evolution release, which has been like waited for years. And so finally the first bit is out. First off, instant send, instant confirmations are now default with the fee waived for 90% or so of transactions. So you just send anything fully confirmed, 1.3 seconds. So that's amazing. A bunch of improvements to the privacy function in terms of how private it is by significantly increasing the rounds of mixing, making it much more efficient, much cheaper, etc. And masternodes are getting split keys now, to where before the person who had the 1,000 units of Dash had the key to prove it and would run the masternode or vote for proposals. That person had to do everything. Now there's a voting key, so you can delegate voting rights to someone if you want. And you can also give an operator key to the guy who's running your node. And you can split your rewards. So you get like 90% and you give like 10% to Naomi's Bitbacker account when they do Dash or something like that. For example, something like that. You can do a split like that. And then they're also introducing, no, it's already done. Special transactions, which are special non-financial transaction types to make a more elegant solution than things like, say, opcodes. So that's what's out now. Next release, which is, I guess, right around the corner, I've been seeing it being worked on, is chain locks, which is the 51% attack proofing, and long-living master cores.
Solutions for 51% attack.
And
it seems like this shouldn't be an issue, right? 51%
yes,
going forward.
And the final bit of news, yeah, Dash is 5, so 5 years old.
Happy birthday,
It's hard.
Happy birthday,
And
Dash.
honestly,
birthday.
a 5-year mark is a good thing. I mean, obviously, you should probably be an early supporter or investor or whatever. If any coin you think is really good, has a good team behind it, all kinds of things like that, that's always good. There's something about the 5-year mark that if you can kind of make it past and thrive past it, it's a good milestone. So I would encourage everyone out there to go around looking at other projects that are getting close to that milestone or have hit that. Ethereum's what, 4, something like that. Just see,
that was like 2015.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
So basically, watch and see what happens. See who can make it past the 5-year line. See what they look like. Are they in shambles? Like when Dash was founded, I believe Litecoin was like a year or so old, and it was within 2 years or so of that time. Dash, which is originally based off of the Litecoin code base, was rebased off of Bitcoin because Litecoin was abandoned by that point.
Huh.
And then later got picked up in 2017 when Charlie Lee found a nice way to sneak it into Coinbase. But anyway, that's a discussion for a different day.
Sneaky Charlie.
Just to have a final power chat. Anonymous asks, may I ask thoughts or opinions on the BTC 1 megabyte cap? That is a whole episode right there. That is definitely not something we can go into. But that being said,
I can answer. I can give my one-word opinion.
All right, give me your one.
Rubbish. All right.
But that's a great topic, actually. Maybe I will have a couple of people on looking at the pros and cons of that. We know why it was created, but then they really held tight to that cap. So great discussion topic. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the power chat as well. So I will look into that and keep you guys posted. Thank you so much to both of you for being on the show today. It's been wonderful having you. Crypto Lark, Joel, appreciate your wisdom that you bring to the table.
Thanks for having us on.
At all.
Absolutely. And thank you so much to everyone who's in the chat. I love all of you. Yeah. You are fantastic. This stream was actually also streamed on Crypto Lark's channel.
Yes. And I have been in both live chats simultaneously with only one keyboard.
Oh,
how do I do it?
You're like a keyboard ninja there.
Keyboard warrior? Oh, that's not
Matt is saying sorry that he raged. You didn't rage, Matt. We appreciate your rage. It's always great to have a bit of rage in the chat. It's awesome. But yeah, thanks to everyone who's watching. If you're watching from Crypto Lark's channel, then come on over, subscribe to my channel too. I love having.
There's a link down below in the description, guys.
Yeah, it's really awesome having him on, having both of you on. And thanks to everyone who sent through power chats and super chats. Anthony Monero for sending the super chat. To Anonymous. I don't know if it's the same Anonymous. Could be the same Anonymous. I sent a bunch of them. And Arlama.
Knowing the internet probably is.
Knowing the internet probably is. Just the same person who sent through super chats and also sent Crypto Lark his first power chat on Bitbacker as well. So thanks all of you. I will let you. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I just got another power chat from.
There we go.
Probably the same person. I want to share this with all of you. It's fractaleconomics.net. Interesting. So I'll post that link in the chat if anyone wants to check that out. I just got a marriage proposal. Thank you very much for that as well. You guys are awesome. I'm going to let you go and enjoy your weekend. What's left of it if you were in Wellington or you're kind of at the beginning of it. Actually, you're at the beginning of it either way.
Yeah.
Go enjoy your weekend, everyone. And thanks so much for tuning in. I love all of you.
Everyone. Bye.